Welcome to All Games New and Old. I'm David Rodriguez, and today we're going to do something a little different. I've decided to start doing some interviews in a series that I at least tentatively am calling the Mic Drop, because in addition to interviews, we're going to have a little debate at the end about a not very controversial topic in the board game industry. And to start this off, there was no one that I could think of that I would rather have on than Riley Stock, who is the host of the Board Game Community Show and the Friend Info Adventure Co. How's it going, Riley?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm actually I'm really nervous here, to be honest with you, because I'm so, I said in a lot of spaces that I really like your interview style. So I feel like me interviewing you is like some rando in the audience going up and challenging Mike Tyson to a fight. Like, it's like, wow, I am not the professional among us here.
No, you'll do great. And a lot of the times I feel like when I get interviewed, it's really weird because I've done so many interviews now that I sometimes naturally turn it around. So I'll try not to. But also, I wish that I dressed up, I could have been in like a boxing outfit and been like, hey, it's good to go up against you, David.
That would be great. I could have done that too, but no one wants to see me without a shirt on or anything. I'd have to like have the robes all, because otherwise. But you do have a cool shirt on that is your podcast, well, one of your podcasts, I should say, the Board Game Community Show, which is the first place that I heard about you or knew about you. I don't even remember how I found your show, to be honest with you. Somehow.
Probably just Twitter. Interactions on Twitter.
It must have been. I don't recall. But or you know what? I think you maybe put out a thing saying you were looking for people to interview. Did you do that?
I did. That's what it was.
Yeah, and then somehow I saw you and I was like, I'm lonely. Talk to me, please.
And I'm so glad I did that though, because I made so many friends just off that one post.
Right.
Like, not followers, friends, like people that I talk to all
the
time and still keep in touch with. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I feel like even just having gotten into your orbit, like I've met a lot of people that I might not have really had interacted with as much as well, because I think you were kind of interacting with them, and so it just started building on each other. So see, you bring people together, Riley. That's what's awesome about you.
I'm a snowball.
Yeah, there you go. That's that's amazing. Don't get into the heat. It's bad. So I guess tell people what your show is actually about, because there's a lot of different board game podcasts out there, and people I'm sure are always trying to decide like which ones they should look at. I know when I've done a search, there's a ton, and I never really know if one is going to be really for me or not. But like, what would you tell people about your podcast if you're hoping they'll listen to it?
Yeah. I do interviews with people throughout the community. So they could be designers, streamers, podcasters, YouTubers, publishers, whatever. As long as it ends with an "er," they're welcome on my show. And
please sing it, right?
It's so weird. I'll get my guitar and I'll start playing, because I sing my intro song and play it on the guitar, and I'll start doing it, and then I get all of those orders mixed up, and then somehow my timing gets off, and so then I like have to drag out like the Board Game Community Show, and so somehow every time I do it, it's a different song.
That's amazing. That song gets in my head so much. It is insane.
Thanks. I had told my cousin, who like goes into competitions composing music for like trailers and stuff, like right. They'll get a scene or a trailer for a movie type thing with no audio, or just the spoken audio, and then they're supposed to make some cool composition, soundtrack for it, and so I told him like, I will pay you to make a cool intro for me. And he was so busy that I finally was like, well, I'm going to just pluck something out. And I improvised it. And that was like the first take, essentially. I went back and refined the lyrics a little bit and decided on the order of what things should be sung in.
Right.
And then that's what it ended up being. So that was like an improvised song turned into a real song.
That's great. I'm just amazed you improvised that. It's man, it's good. I'll
Well,
be humming it
thanks.
all the time. Yeah, I've been listening to my podcast on 1.25 speed because I keep needing to catch up because I'll just fall behind, and I don't notice it so much when people are talking, but music really throws me off. Like I was like, oh my gosh,
Right?
Riley needs to slow down on this song, and it's my own doing, but
It's
that's where it gets bad.
it's so weird because I listen at 1.25 speed too,
Uh,
and it's the exact same thing. Like when people are talking, it sounds really natural. They
mhm,
have the same cadence. It feels like almost the same cadence.
right.
There's still those like dramatic pauses or whatever. And I feel like at 1.5, people start to get a little distorted. At 2, they're definitely distorted.
Oh yeah,
But
I can't do that.
music is the main thing. Once music starts playing, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds
Oh,
super
I'm listening
bizarre.
sped up. Yeah. And then if
Yeah,
you go back even from 1.2 and listen to 1, you're like, oh man, they sound drunk or something. They're so
right.
slow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if anyone listens at half speed. Like that's an option. I don't like. Why would you listen at half speed? I don't
Well,
understand.
I did a little bit because I had caught up on one of the podcasts I love. It was probably Organized Fun,
Mm.
and I was like, "Hey, look, a new episode came out." So, in order to double the amount of content that they're putting out, I'm listening at half speed because now an hour podcast turns into a 2-hour podcast. You
That's
know?
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I could only do it for maybe 30 seconds, but it was
Yeah.
really fun to listen to.
Yeah, it would be fun. It's fun when you go from the higher speed to that because then they really sound like they're having some kind of a severe issue of some kind. I don't even know, but
Yeah.
so so you've been doing. I mean, you're obviously pretty deep in the board game hobby, but how did you get to the board game hobby? How did you arrive at this ridiculously expensive pit that we're in?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You can see shelves behind me, right? And
Oh yeah.
I've got 3 mini mountains building on my floor.
Oh yeah.
How'd I get here? I was. I don't know. I hope you can't hear my cats fighting in the background. We got a new kitten, and he is
Aw.
relentless on trying to play with the older cats. It's cute, but it's also constant. All
I,
day.
I I I can hear them a little, but usually there's like kids screaming in the background on my videos if you listen carefully enough. So I mean, anyone who's watched me before has got to be used to weird background noises. So that's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it.
So originally, I had a group of friends from. I was. I used to be religious, and so I was going to church then, and so they started doing game nights, and they busted out things like Ticket to Ride and Catan, and I was like, "Whoa, these are awesome!" Telestrations, all these kind of. It was a mix between some Euro games and party games,
Right.
and then thought, I'm going to go to a game store, and I started going, and I was like, holy cow, look at all this stuff. And I found Marvel Legendary there, and a big Marvel head here.
Right.
Love Marvel. I mean, you can see my Marvel United. Actually, I think that's all just a Marvel shelf. So I've got like Marvel
Oh wow.
Champions, Marvel United, Marvel Legendary. There's
Nice.
probably Marvel Munchkin and 5-Minute Marvel. Like,
Fantastic.
I'm a total sucker for Marvel.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. And so I got that and discovered it had a solo. When I bought it, I didn't realize it had a solo mode. I didn't know you could play board games by yourself. And so that was really
Right.
nice to be able to play with my brothers, but then play by myself. And just, I loved the whole deck building aspect. Like, never heard of anything like that before. And so I played that for forever. I mean, that was my number one game up until Marvel Champions. But slowly I started adding more and more games, not too many. But once I got on, what was it? Oh, I started designing a game.
Oh yeah.
And I had been designing it for like a year and a half. And then somebody I grew up with, he had posted like, oh, we're doing this gaming convention. And he posted some games that he was designing. And I was like, what in the world? Like, this guy used to be my boss. He grew up down the street from me. His brother is like one of my best friends growing up. Oh, like, what is going
Wow.
on? I didn't know that other people designed board games. I thought I was just being a dorky nerd, like this was like my closeted hobby that I would like work on every
Aw.
moment I was alone,
Yeah.
And so then I ended up going to that convention, Protocon, and it just had 2 rooms full of designers. I played a game or two there, got in their Discord, found out about this world, got on Twitter, found the board game kind of community there, and just snowballed from there more and more. I mean, that was really where it like kicked off, was finding the Twitter community.
Oh
Oof.
yeah. Yeah, that'll make you spend money.
Yeah.
You see too many cool things and people raving about them, and oh god.
Yeah, the nice thing about being in it long enough is that you kind of can curtail your excitement of some games, like the
Right.
hype. You'll
Sure.
see a new game and all these people are posting it, and it seems really exciting, but then at the same time you're like, well, this could just be the excitement of it coming
That's
out.
true.
Like, I don't need
That's
to
true.
buy this right now.
Yeah. I know without I'm not gonna mention any games that I haven't played and say anything bad about them, but like there's been some games that I've looked at and like there's been hype and I just looked at it and be like, I don't know. And there's nothing I could point out that say this is what's wrong with it, but like something about it is not sure. And then it'll come out later and people are like, yeah, and I'm like, what? Am I psychic? How did I don't know how I knew. It's amazing. Granted, not that I've never bought a stinker or anything like that, but it's like I feel like as you get into it, you get kind of a weird like sixth sense about some of these things that you're like, this is not going to work out for me for
Yeah.
some reason. So
I'm trying to eye your shelf while we're talking about like stinkers, and I'm like, do I see any that? But I don't.
there's at least one, and again, I'm not gonna point it out
That's
because
okay.
it could, but there's one that I got that has, oh god, I'm gonna narrow it down with this, that has app integration, and everyone that I've talked to about it, I haven't tried it yet, says that the app makes it nearly unplayable. So
Oh no.
and I got it I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago, and they're still coming out with updates about how they're fixing the app, and supposedly now it's great, they say. So we'll see. I should
Of
try it,
course.
but I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I
I'll
guess
start guessing on what it is. No, I'm
yeah.
just no.
All of these are stinkers to somebody. So,
I know, right?
that's just how it is. Like, what are you going to do? I keep
Yeah.
getting in debates with people lately about Marvel Legendary versus Champions, which are both fantastic games. I can't say anything bad about the one I like less because it's like marginally less. It's like, they're close. They're close.
When I started playing with design, actually before I started designing my own game, I was doing kind of homebrew stuff for Legendary, because in my head I was thinking it would be so much more fun if I got to play as Wolverine or play as Captain
Right.
America,
Yeah.
Iron Man,
Sure.
And so I started designing like a character card. So you would take that character and they would have an
That's cool.
ability, and it might, it would be like if you're Captain America, then you get bonus attack when you use different characters in the same turn to attack or something like that. Whatever it was.
Right.
All these different things, and I had this huge spreadsheet, and it was
Oh
really
my God.
fun. But then from there I thought, well, why don't I just actually design my own game? And
Yeah.
that was an even bigger task.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I gotta do everything from scratch. It's crazy, but
Yeah.
that's how I hear a lot of designers start. Is they start by kind of modding games that they own, and then that's that gets them on the path to being like, well, I could just do my whole own thing. Which I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like that's what you did too. I guess how many different games have you designed? Do you think? Do you know?
I mean, designs, like, I think only 2 or 3 have made it to play testing, but other than that, there's probably about 20
Wow.
games like in my folder that have either rule, because I guess I'm weird. A lot of people don't. They'll come up with an idea and they'll just write like the basics of what the idea is and start play testing it. And I
Right.
start with the rule book. Like, I love writing my rule books, and so I
Wow.
have,
That's good.
for most of those games, I probably, out of 20 of those games, there's probably like 15 rule books. So I could give that to somebody, and then theoretically they could make their own pieces and try it out. But
Oh wow.
I don't know.
So do you have do you have like a certain kind of style when you're designing games? Like different I guess some designers are really known for certain types of games. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that you have a certain type that you would be known for if all these hit the market at once? They'd be like, oh, this is definitely a Riley Stock game.
It's definitely co-op. Like,
Okay,
I grew up playing, I don't know if do you have siblings?
I do. I've got an older sister and two much older half brothers.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you did this with your siblings or your friends, but like when you were playing video games as a kid and it wasn't multiplayer, you would just sit there and like watch your brother play, and then they might
Oh
die
yeah,
and you would hand off the controller. So eventually that led to more co-op games, and we just co-op was our jam. And so
right.
board games being co-op, that just fits me and my family and my style. So it's definitely yeah, board.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. So co-op games, and then also things dealing with mental health, because I've had a plethora of mental health problems, and it's like design what you know. And
right.
so some of them would be themed behind like, well, here's what it's like to be bipolar. Here's what it's like to have ADHD. But then my wife, thankfully, probably is like, this might be insensitive, so you should re-theme this from ADHD to anything else. And so
To anything else. That's funny.
yeah. And so it'll be like, okay, well now you're multiple aliens trying to control one body or something, like,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
or you're a really unorganized adventure company trying to sort out contracts.
right.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, that works. I mean, it still kind of works as an analogy for, the original idea. So,
yeah.
and probably has broader appeal. Maybe, I would imagine. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I've always been told. It's like, oh yeah, you can retheme it to be fantasy.
Hmm.
So it makes sense. Have you actually? I wanted to ask you. Let's switch
Oh
seats
boy.
here for a second. But
Okay.
have you homebrewed anything, or like come up with any custom content for games, or even designed your own game?
So other than the occasional like just real simple house rule, I haven't done a lot to mod a game. Um, my wife and I were working on two different games for a while. We had one that was a pirate theme game because she really wants to find like her perfect pirate game, and she hasn't found one that does everything that she wants. So we're working on that, and that was going to be a pretty big, complex one where you had different historical pirates you could choose from, and you'd be I don't even remember what side the end goal is, but I've got somewhere on my phone. I've got this giant thing of like notes for what they wanted the game to do, and it's probably way too much. I'm sure we're falling into the trap that every designer says that when you're starting, you try to include everything in the kitchen sink in your game. So, whatever. We'll see if we made like a cool like board and stuff, but I don't think we didn't really get to the point where we truly prototyped it in any way. I also was making, boy, we're talking about a niche within a niche. I was making a game based on pro wrestling, but like the business side of pro wrestling. So you weren't like, I'm a wrestler and I'm going in here, but it's like you had to get you had to like prepare for like your pay-per-view event, and so you had to get the right wrestlers together, and you were competing with like the other player who had their own company, and you could try to lure away like their big wrestlers into your company and all kinds of weird stuff like that. We did kind of prototype that as like a deck building game. I don't know if that's the right mechanic to go with, but it's one that I know pretty well. But that was kind of fun. Again, that's like a super niche within a niche. If I ever got that published, I'd be like, hey, this is it. And if it was good, they'd be like, hey, this is great. We're changing the theme immediately. So that's what would happen. Which would bum me out a little bit, but I get it. It's anyway. And then recently I've been kind of thinking about like a really, I do not have a structure for this at all, but a really kind of basic game where you, did you ever see the old video game? I think it was called Spy Hunter, where you're like in this car and you can like shoot things at people, and like oil spots drop and you have to avoid them, and you're
I think I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, it was going to be kind of like that, where it's sort of like a car combat race kind of thing along a road, and then each car just has like 4 quadrants that'll have like the left or right of the road, and then your car will be in like one of those spots, and you have to like kind of put it down in a certain way, and then certain cards will let you be shooting things or whatever, but it might cost you speed. I don't know how this is going to work, to be honest, or if it could, but I've got an idea for it that should be much simpler than either of those other games. So we'll see if I can pull it together. But I don't know. It's hard because it's just having the time to devote to that is, ooh, it's tough. It's tough with kids and work and everything else under the sun. So not too much on my end, and I'd probably get it done and then be terrified to ever show anybody at any point ever.
Oh,
So that's
I
all
totally
right.
feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I go to design meetings and I think I've only brought one of my designs ever, but
Oh,
I have a
really?
lot of fun playing them, other people's designs, and giving feedback. And I
Right.
know I need to just bring them, and well, part of it's also uh, actually making a prototype. That part's hard.
Yeah, that is hard. Yeah. Because you have to, I mean, depending on the game, like you might have to have like a lot of cards or pieces or whatever, and
Yeah.
getting all those made up is a bit of a craft project, which
Yeah.
is kind of tough. I was thinking I need to buy some like that. You can buy like blank playing cards. I need to get those, and I can just like write things on them. So I'm not trying to, because if I have to cut out a bunch of sheets of paper, I'm just not going to do it. It's not going to last very long. So
Yeah.
I know
My
me.
my friend, he has this kind of art style that he does, and he loves like Viking mythology and all that,
Hmm.
funness. And so he wanted to make a game, and he was like, well, why don't, I know you're really into games, why don't you come up with something? And so we worked together, and I came up with this. I think it was actually a really fun game, and I guess I actually did play test that one too. So I guess I've had 2 or 3 of my games play tested.
Hey, that's
Uh,
great.
but it was a really interesting one, and I was just printing stuff out. But then I did find those playing cards that you can just are white,
Right.
and I got those, and I thought, well, maybe I can do dry erase markers so that because you're gonna have to like edit it. So I'd like lick it and try and get it off, and even just shuffling those things, it smears. And then I thought,
No,
okay,
I
well, I
bet.
might as well
Yeah.
make it
Uh,
permanent, and then the ink still smears, so they're not necessarily super great.
yeah. Would it be? I wonder if it's possible. Like if you write on with dry erase on a card, could you put that in a sleeve, or would even just putting it in a sleeve
That
mess it
actually
up?
might be better.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
probably a better idea.
But then I bet you
Oh,
probably have to throw away the sleeves though, because I bet the ink would get on the sleeve itself on the inside. So I don't know if that.
uh,
I don't know.
yeah, you'd get
Mm,
those penny sleeves, but what I see a lot of people do is just print it out on regular paper or write it out on paper, and then they sleeve it with a playing card
yeah,
so that it
that makes
has
sense.
the feel, and you can't tell
Right.
through it what it
Yeah. Oh,
is.
that's smart. Man, people
People
are
are
smarter than I
smart.
am. I can't.
Me too.
I
When I
would never
first
say
saw that, I was like, "What? Okay."
that. People are geniuses. Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, so so on your on the board game community show, you've had a wide variety of guests from like really big, well-known designers all the way down to like me, and and you've done really awesome. But like okay, so I think I would be very nervous interviewing some of these people because I think I would feel like, oh, they're so far above me. Did you have any nerves with any of your guests going in? Like, were you nervous about it? Or were you afraid that it wasn't gonna go well? Or do you hear the airplane in the background?
I
Because
do,
we're
and
near
I live
we're
right by
near
an airport, and I thought it was
we do
me for a
too.
second.
No, we live near a little airport, and so like there's often anyway. You know, yeah.
Funny.
So,
Yeah,
but
I
ignore
feel
that
that.
part. Yeah. The rest, yeah. Did you ever get nervous having to even in the contacting part of them or the interviewing part?
Yeah, oh yeah. So the very first interview I ever did was on Nerding Out, which I know you listened
Mhm.
to that.
Yeah.
And that was with Rob Davio. And
Oh, that's
that
a good
was,
deal.
I was so nervous. And my co-host's brother, he had met Rob and was like, "Oh, he's so awesome," but he's very like serious.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that made me way more nervous because I was like, we're very go with the flow,
Right.
casual people, and that's how we talked about doing the interview. And then come to find out like that he wanted to be like a TV writer, a comedy writer, and he was really funny and really loose. And
Oh well, that's good. Yeah.
I messed up and I didn't record the beginning of the first attempt, and he was just like, "Oh, it's fine, like we can go over that again." And of course we didn't go over that 15 minutes again.
Right. Right.
because it didn't feel natural.
Right.
But that made me feel more confident. But then after that, like I would say I get I get a lot of anxiety,
Mhm.
and especially when it's people I don't necessarily know. So like the very first interviews, I was super nervous. I think you could probably hear it. I think the very, very first one, episode 1. Oh, look, can you hear my plane?
Yeah, this is exciting.
That's the same plane, right? It just made it over my way.
Wow, that's amazing. It's fast, very fast.
But I remember being nervous for a lot of them. Some of them I got to like listen to some of their content if they were YouTubers or
Mhm.
podcasters. Some of them were designers. And so I was like, well, at least I have a game to talk about. I know what topic to talk about. With
Right.
you weren't, you hadn't even started your YouTube.
No, I was just like getting ready to basically at that
Yeah.
point.
You were like a few months out or a month or two out still.
Yeah, I was amazed you had me on.
Yeah. When I was nervous because I was like, what are we going to talk about? Like I don't have any of his content to watch. You had written reviews, right?
Yeah, I'd done some written reviews for Board Game Squad.
Oh, yeah. So like you didn't have much out there.
Mhm.
And so it's always a relief, usually within the first 5 minutes. I'm very casual. You're very casual. And
Yeah.
that's how most of them are. So like even eventually when I was brave enough to ask people like Elizabeth Hargrave and Eric Lang, uh, I was obviously very, very nervous, but usually within the first 5 minutes of chatting with them,
Mhm.
they instantly like put you at ease. I think they've done so many interviews that it's like, oh yeah, I know how this goes type thing.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, those two especially I think I'd be like, so games, huh? You just talk about games. Like I don't know. I think that'd be I mean, maybe it'd be fine. I'm sure it would be. I'm sure they put you at ease pretty well, but man, ooh, I was so impressed. Like still to this day, like you have I think your interview with Eric Lang is my favorite one I've heard with him, and I've heard several, but I don't know. I just felt like it was like so like casual and friendly, and which is what I like about your interview style is it's not like this soup. I don't want to say not structured, 'cause that makes it sound like sloppy. That's not what I mean, but it's like it's not this stiff thing. It feels like you're just really chatting, but still getting a lot of fun information out of people, which is awesome.
yeah.
What interview are you like the most proud of? Like, if you could point people to go to like one interview specifically, is there one that you would send them to?
Oh, obviously yours.
Oh, well, I mean, but I mean, other than that,
Second one, my absolute favorite one is the one with Tanya Pobeda, and I should look up what episode number it is. I should just
yeah,
know that because a lot of times when people ask me like, oh, you have a podcast, which episode should I listen to?
right.
That's the one I say, and it's because she does research in the board game industry about like marketing and
Mhm.
how we market mostly to white men and what percentage of people like the percentage in the population that game and why are we doing it this way, and the numbers don't make sense. Like if you started doing inclusivity on your box art, that might lure more people in from diverse cultures. Like
Right.
there's more sheep, I think there's more sheep on
Mm.
box art cover than
Excuse me.
women or black people.
Wow, yeah, I'd
And
forgotten that little detail. That's
yeah.
insane.
And so there's like so many little treasures in there that are mind blowing like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, because she actually has
Yeah.
data. You know what I mean? Like I could talk on these things, but I wouldn't be able to give anybody any kind of ratio or anything like that. I wouldn't know percentages. Period. I'd be like, sure seems this way, which I think I'd be right in that case. But it's very easy for someone who doesn't think that way to be like, well, you're just saying that because whatever. But she actually has done the research to figure it out. So
Yeah.
you can't talk her out of that, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. Like she knows her stuff. And
Hmm.
so that's one of my favorite ones. But Eric Lang is another one. Although I'm a little self conscious about that one. And I know that people tell me that's one of the best episodes. And I do
Right.
agree, but I just feel guilty because I know Eric has talked about like what it's like being a Black designer and designing in the Lovecraft world. Maybe he hasn't talked that much about it, but on Twitter, I always get nervous that I'm like, oh, I hate to just like have a Black person on and talk about being Black, like,
Right.
because they're more than that, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. It's kind of tough. Like I would love to at some point have guests on here where we talk about a more serious topic, but ideally, if it's about something where people are negatively affected, I want to have someone from that group on here. But also, I don't want to be like, hey, do you want to come on and talk about how you've been negatively affected? Because I mean, like, that must be so tiring after a point. Like, they probably just would rather, people would probably just rather talk about games. But, it's yeah. What are you gonna do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the right
Yeah.
answer to this. I really don't. So I mean, it's just it kind of
It's
is
one
what
of
it is.
those tricky things when you do interviews, like, because I think it's important to all of us about the inclusion, about,
Mhm.
making sure that we're very aware of these problems in our industry and in the
Right.
world. And, I'm an outspoken leftist and a bad person, but but I do think
Yeah.
it's important to educate. And I think that comes from, just you gotta be aware, hearing it from people who are personally impacted.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the, female experience is. I need other people to say that. And I
Right.
want to support however I can.
Yeah, it's like something like that. I could guess at it, and I know what I've heard, but I feel like me trying to explain it. I, it, you know, I can't. I'm not coming from a place where I really know, and I feel like I just don't know that that's helpful to anybody. You know what I mean? Like maybe it'd be something okay, but I think the best thing, I mean, I'm half Mexican, but I'm the most white presenting person in the world. So, um, all I could do is be like, yeah, you have my support and tell me what I need to do. And, we'll just go from there, I guess. And, that's it. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
I feel that, like, I'm part Kiowa, and it's like
mm,
people would just think I'm a white guy, like, which is,
yeah,
as far as my experience in life, like, I am just some white guy, like, because that's how I look. I
right,
haven't had those really negative interactions where
right,
somebody calls me something just because of how I look, type thing,
right, right.
or judges me on how I look. And so, yeah, when I started the channel, that was a commitment that I made, to amplify voices that needed to be amplified.
Yeah.
And so I hope that I've at least somewhat done that, but we'll see.
I mean, it seems to me you have. Granted, there's a bunch of people that are on your show that I don't know what their ethnicity or anything is. Some of them I do, but you've been not afraid to tackle some of those issues, which I think some other content creators really are. Like, they don't want to touch anything with that, like that with the 10-foot pole, because they don't want to. I think they don't want to get on anyone's bad side or what have you, which I get, but I always appreciate more the people who are willing to touch on those topics and not shy away from some of the more difficult things.
Yeah. And I think, you did that video where you were like, everybody's welcome except for,
Yeah,
like, this isn't welcome here. And I think that's what we need to do as a whole,
yeah,
is we need to set those lines. It's all about inclusion, but inclusion means that the people there have to also include people.
right,
So, like, if you have somebody racist at your table,
hmm,
not including, kicking them out is an inclusive thing, because that means that one person will ruin the rest of your table.
yeah, exactly.
So,
I had one person talk to me in regards to that video and say, well, how will these people, we'll say racist, but there's a lot of different issues,
yeah,
but how will that person grow if they're not around different people? And that is not a bad point, but I like, in my opinion, we're talking about, I guess, around the physical table, but really I'm talking about, if there's any kind of community around me, that too. Um, it's more important to me to have a safe space for the people who have had these negative opinions on them, uh, rather than risk creating an unsafe space by having someone else. I hope these other people come around. I do. And if the people who are negatively affected wanted me to help facilitate that, that's fine. But I'm not just, if I can keep those people away from the people who have been negatively affected by, name your type of hatred. That's more important to me in a general sense. And then if somebody who has been negatively affected wants to try to connect with someone who is not super great and try to maybe change their mind, that's awesome. But I can't control all that. I can only try to, curate my space and keep it to where people are safe as much as I can. I mean, it's limited, but to the extent that I'm able to.
I think that's exactly it. And if I can share a story here.
Yeah, please do.
I grew up very religious and very conservative.
Mhm.
And I think, like with LGBTQ, like my sister, I was the first person she came out to. And I was very supportive and loving, but at the same time, I was like, I honestly don't know how I feel about that,
Mhm.
because church has always told me that's bad, like my political party has always like gone against that, and that marriage is for man and woman. And so my
Right.
sister would always come at me with these like hypotheticals, and like gay marriage wasn't around then, like people were fighting for that right. And so she would come to me and be like, if it comes down to it, and when there's an eventual vote, will you vote yes or no on this? And I was like, honestly, right now I wouldn't vote. I'd stay back because I don't understand like my position on it.
Right.
And I feel so bad about that, because and she would get really upset. That was the thing.
Right.
She would get
Right.
upset. She would yell at me, and then usually that closed the conversation off.
Yeah.
So I was stuck in that mode for years and years, and like still being very supportive, but also, like I still had that wall built where I was like, well, I love you, but I don't believe what you're doing is right.
Right.
And then eventually I had this Spanish tutor, and I was taking classes from him. He was in the same religion as me. And come to find out that he was married to a man. This was after gay marriage got legalized, so quite a while later. And
Excuse me.
And so he was like, yeah, I don't really talk about it. Like, of course, I'm happy to talk about it if people want to. And I'm happy to answer questions. And so we ended up like talking and having real conversations. And they were very polite, never got mad, and didn't shame me for asking questions. Didn't get upset by my like very ignorant questions. And that's what ended up turning, like being like, you know what? Yeah, that's messed. I regret ever feeling any like on the fence. I was never against it. I just didn't understand it enough to actually have an opinion on it or to support it.
Yeah.
And that's because of my growing up, like my surroundings. And so I'm really, really grateful that somebody did have that conversation. That said, Twitter's not the place to have those conversations, like
it can be a little rough.
Yeah, like I'm not going to change anybody's mind on Twitter, even on the podcast sometimes, hopefully, or even like this kind of thing, hopefully people don't get like completely shut off by it, but you do have to have those like very friendly conversations, because once you get, bickering, that's when people throw up their walls and then it's like, no, I have to defend my core belief.
Right.
So anyway,
and it's hard to tell tone of voice in Twitter or any kind of just online, text form, which, I mean, that wouldn't solve all problems, but certainly some of them, like you can't tell. It's easy to read that someone is speaking to you maybe in an angry way when that's not what they're intending, or just misinterpreting someone's emotions in any way is very simple to do on those forums. So excuse me.
Sorry for bringing it, political.
No, that's
Or I don't
that's
know. I hate to even say that's political. Like, decency shouldn't be a political thing, right?
right.
Like, being a good person shouldn't be political. But that's honestly having more empathy and wanting people to be happy has made me more liberal.
Yeah, these things they've become kind of politicized, but they really shouldn't be. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It'd be like the pineapple on pizza thing becoming a political issue. Of course, that's much less serious, but it's also nonsensical. It's like, well, you do it or you don't. Like, why are we talking about it? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like having pineapple on your pizza doesn't affect somebody who doesn't like pineapple on their pizza.
Yeah, and I hate to compare it to something so like meaningless, but I mean, it to me, it is almost as ludicrous. Trying to make a big deal out of that. Like, it just shouldn't be that big a deal. Like, who cares? It doesn't affect you. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Go on.
Let people live their lives.
If people are happy, be happy that they're happy, and do whatever you're gonna do. So, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Feel free to cut all of this out if you don't want it.
It doesn't bother me one bit, but if you
okay, cool.
If you come back and it bothers you, let me know. But
no,
let's see.
Get back to board games.
Yeah, well, sure. I was trying to figure out a good segue for this, and I can't. I'm really trying. So I've talked about the Board Game Community Show, but you also do another podcast that is the Friend and Foe Adventure Co. Can you tell me? Oh, I know about it, but tell the listeners or viewers, whatever I don't know. Are you looking at me? Are you viewing? Or are you just listening to me? Are you even listening to me, people? No, I'm talking to the audience. I don't know what they do. Tell them all about it.
Yeah, Friend and Foe Adventure Co. So there's a video game called Borderlands. It's a series. It's my favorite series, and it's very it's got cell shaded. It's kind of comic book cartoony looking, and it's set in a galaxy far away, whatever it is. But it doesn't take itself seriously at all, and it's guns and violence and jokes and robots, all that stuff. And I actually have some guilt about the gun part sometimes, but it's a game. We're playing a game in this fictional world. And so in that world of Borderlands, there's a tabletop RPG. They have their D&D, but it's called Bunkers. Am I allowed to say this on yours?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
okay.
It's the name of, you're fine. It's the name of the game. It's fine.
Okay, yeah. It's called Bunkers and Badasses, and so it's like just one DLC in Borderlands 2, and then they ended up making it a real tabletop RPG. And so, of course, my love of Borderlands, I was like, I have to do an actual play with this. And I think I actually had this planned before I ever started the Board Game Community Show.
Oh wow, so, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, as soon as they announced it. Literally before they were finished announcing it, I was already like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm doing an actual play podcast. I don't know who's going to be on it, but I'll figure that out when it comes. And so, yeah, we do an actual play. I'm the BM, aka Bunker Master. My wife plays one of the characters, and then a couple people in the community. I guess it's another friend of mine, Matt, plays another friend, Kyle, and then Phil, who does another board game podcast. And we just get to play and goof off, and I love it. It's my real first dive into a tabletop RPG. I played a little bit of D&D. I listened to D&D podcasts, but I never actually played or led a game. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remembered you saying at some point that was your first. I'm gonna say game mastering. I don't want to say. I chuckle because I'm 12 every time you say you're a BM. I can't help it. Anyway, but that's shocking to me because honest to God, I feel like I've been complimenting you a few times, and I feel like it sounds like I'm just blowing smoke, but I'm not. I don't usually like actual plays very much. I've listened to several, and I just haven't gotten very far. And before I'm like, nah, not for me. But I always listen to yours, and I listen to podcasts at work, and I'll be driving along in my mail vehicle, and I'm just laughing like an idiot. And I'm sure everyone on my route who's seen that thinks something's wrong with me because I'm in my vehicle just throwing my head back and laughing. So but it's hilarious, and I think you roll with the punches really well because players never do what you think they're gonna do. That's just how it is.
Yes.
Because you had an episode that and tell me if I'm wrong here, where you were planning to have this big boss fight, and they completely circumvented that, and I'm sure that must have been shocking to you, but if I hadn't known that was the backstory, I would have been like, oh well, this is probably all planned. Like it went totally fine from the listener point of view, in my opinion.
Yes.
Did that freak you out when that happened? Were you
Absolutely. And actually, there's that episode, I felt so self-conscious, and I kept apologizing to my players, like even during the recording, and of course I edit that out so that it sounds like it's all good. After, for weeks, I was just like, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. Like I should have done better adjusting. And then when I finally got around to editing it, I was like, what was I so upset about? Like, this came together really well.
Yeah.
And that character has actually, she was supposed to die in episode 1.
Wow.
But somehow she keeps escaping. Somehow she keeps living, and I'm just like, okay, cool. This is the fun part of D&D. Now I have this like staple character.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But that one, and then actually those first 7 episodes are like the first arc,
right?
And that was planned as like a 2 or 3 episode arc.
Oh wow!
But the players kept doing different things and stretching it out, and I was like, cool, this is a lot of fun. There was another episode where they're like, I set it up so that they have a clear objective, and this is one of my favorite setups, because like I had a character tell them exactly what they needed to do, and then they're discussing the plan, and then all of a sudden there's a moment where somebody suggests something different, and I'm like, okay, quick, adjust, like, because I can tell already, like, they are not going to do what I told them to do.
Yeah.
And so it's just really fun. I did, with Matt and Kimmy, I had DM'd a little bit of a Dungeons and Dragons. We did like 2 sessions.
Okay.
A couple of months before Bunkers and Badasses. And that was just to like test out me doing BMing, in front of people. I obviously
I really will never. I can't. Something's wrong with me. I can't do that.
I obviously am super immature too. And the podcast is very explicit. There is definitely some violent language, sometimes gross things in there. But it's, we're just immaturely mature. We're an immaturely mature podcast, as I've started saying. What was one of the other things? Sorry, I had at the end of my episode, at the end, I've got my newer, like, pre-recorded outro. And in there, I talk about the BM screen, and it's my favorite thing, because I just do the, the deluxe edition comes with a BM screen, so it makes it easier so you can BM in front of your friends. And
I love it.
Obviously, I'm very immature too.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
What I think is cool about that, because like I've played Borderlands, but nowhere near what you have done. I played like just a tiny bit of Borderlands 1, and really I would say I'm still just really a tiny bit into Borderlands 2. So like I don't know the world like you do by any stretch, but it's not like you don't have to have that background knowledge. I don't feel like. I was amazed. I was a little worried I'd be kind of baffled at what's going on when I knew this was coming out, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just because I don't know if that game is supposed to take place in that game world itself, or if it's kind of different. I'm not sure, but like but yeah, I don't know, or if it might be just your job as a BM, or it's like I don't feel like it's confusing at all. Like it's really easy to get. Is that something that you're doing on purpose, or does the setting just lend itself to that, or
yeah,
what?
Because in the Borderlands 2 DLC, they're like on Pandora.
Okay.
So it's set like they are playing a tabletop RPG in the DLC.
Oh, okay.
So there's orcs and goblins, and sometimes I forget to do that stuff because I'm so like immersed in just the Borderlands universe. But then I'll throw
Mm.
in like, oh, here's a half orc, here's a goblin, here's a a troll, whatever. I'll throw in these fantasy elements every once in a while when I remember. Uh, but I'm actually editing an episode that we recorded like, oh gosh, near the beginning, and it just didn't fit in where with that stuff that we were doing, and I didn't want to shove it in there. So it's going to come out in like 2 months, and I finally explained. I kept thinking that I had explained the world and how it worked and where it
Right.
fit, but it was in this episode that I had put off, and
Oh, wow.
so
Okay.
like 21 episodes in or whenever it airs is when this explanation would happen. But essentially there's Pandora in the world setting we have. Pandora is like the fantasy Pandora where
Okay.
Borderlands 2 happens, the DLC happens, Assault on Dragon Keep. And then there's Wonderlands. So Wonderlands is the new game, right? Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So we could end up visiting there and doing adventures with some of those characters. And then there's Alaspis. So they're almost their own countries, essentially.
Okay.
So in one of the episodes, I think I forgot to say it, but like Tarquin goes from Pandora into Alaspis.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right on.
I didn't explain it well in the podcast. I'm learning as I go.
It's all right. I mean, it's pretty easy to kind of get a grip on what's going on in there, I think. And so you had not played you hadn't played any RPGs it was you played with your wife, D&D. And then I'm sorry, was it one of the other players that's currently in it that you played with?
Yeah, Matt, good boy.
Okay, right on.
So because we're all friends in real life, obviously.
Yeah.
But my brother also DM'd a first session of Strahd.
Oh, okay.
It's just to kind of give me an example of how things went. And my very first time playing D&D was me and a friend. We would Shanai fight. Do you know what Shanais are?
No. Mm-mm.
They're like bamboo swords.
Oh, okay.
So like we would just go in the middle of the street, high school kids, and just
God.
Sword fight in the middle of the street. Really, it was just whacking each other with sticks. It's great.
Yeah.
But I remember after one of the times, like I jammed my finger or something, and so I couldn't fight anymore. And he was like, "Well, do you want to try D&D?" And I think it was 3rd edition back then.
Wow.
And so we made a character over the course of like 40 minutes. We played this it was just me and him, and he DM'd for me, and I was like, that was really fun. And we never played again. And I was always wondering, like, is it because I like took my daggers and climbed up the wall and then dropped on somebody? Like, was I being too weird?
Sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's like normal D&D stuff, like you have, especially when you first get into that world and they're like, you can do anything. You're like, well, let me push this to the limits. Can I really do anything? I'm going to do a backflip and, and stab this guy in the face, whatever.
Right.
So those are really my experiences playing, like 14 years later or however many years. I don't know how old I am.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
Man.
But yeah, was that what you were asking? Was
more or less. I was kind of impressed because I think that that group works really well together, which is of course great for a podcast. So,
yeah.
And Phil, I would say, is especially hilarious. Like almost every time he talks, he has me laughing about something horrifying. Usually, he said, like it's usually horrifying.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely lucked into having Phil there, but I can't imagine doing the podcast without him. He's horrible.
Yeah, he is. But I mean, in a good way. It's
yeah.
He's
who knows
fantastic.
if he'll watch this.
I have no idea. I don't know.
But eventually, like we've had guests on, like if you don't mind me saying this, but like I had Drake Wilson was played by Ian, who's the lead designer of the game.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my brother steps in for a game probably in like I don't know, in a couple weeks. There's an episode with my brother in it. And then there's Zoe Allred.
Okay.
They're a board game designer, so they
Yeah.
stepped in for a role, and I plan on having you in there, right? Is
Yeah,
that all right to say? Are you good with that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Why not
I'm
announce
excited.
it on your show?
Sure, I will be on there at some point doing something. We don't know yet. Something's gonna happen. It'll be awesome.
I had a plan for you, but now I scrapped that plan, which I often do.
That's fine. I have no plan so far, so I can go with the flow, whatever it is. So
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Last thing. You get me talking
Yeah.
about Friend Info Adventure Co. Oh, I'll go off for hours.
No, okay. Go for it.
My favorite episode is episode 11. It's called Jorm Harkins.
Mhm.
And it's a flashback episode because Kimmy was too tired to play that day. So she was sleeping in. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to do this flashback episode. And I literally had nothing planned for it.
Oh, wow.
We started off and I kind of gave suggestions like maybe you're this time or this time. And I completely improvised the entire episode. Didn't have a single plan, just came up as we talked. And it's one of my favorite episodes because of how well it actually ended up flowing together.
Wow. That's nice.
Yeah.
I love it when it works out that way.
So if I was to recommend an episode of that, and the nice thing about that one too is that it's a prequel where it's a flashback. So really, if you've never listened to the podcast, you could just start on episode 11 and get kind of a feel of the characters and the show.
Fantastic. Yep, that's a good way to go about it, I imagine. But yeah, I've loved every episode, so I'm glad that you did that because give me something a little different to listen to because it's not like anything else that I'm listening to. So pretty good.
I appreciate that, and I always appreciate you'll message me random lines or something from the podcast, and sometimes it takes me a second. I'll be like, "What is David talking? Oh my gosh! Yes."
Yeah, I forget that you don't necessarily have these things in mind at that particular moment, but I just like it makes me laugh so much that I'm like, oh my God, Riley.
It brightens up my day every time you do that. And
oh, good.
That's the fun thing about doing content really at all. But this one where we have a story, sometimes people will just like randomly message me or tweet at me on that account and say something they thought was funny or some sort of idea or like whatever it is. They just get really excited about the show and the story, and it brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
And it's very different from the board game community show because obviously there I'm getting to know people and I don't have to prepare as much for that.
Right.
So it's looser. I don't know. It's a interesting having two different podcasts.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Well, I think, excuse me, since we've been going for about an hour here, I think we should probably get to our little debate. And so the way we're going to have this structured, at least for now, unless I decide something else is better in the future, is we're going to have a topic. In this case, we're going to be talking about acrylic standees, which are kind of becoming more popular, I think, versus miniatures. So we're going to randomly decide who is taking what part of this. Now, it's not going to be probably structured like a regular, like formal debate because one, I don't remember how those are structured. So what we're going to do is we are going to decide who's taking what side. We're going to decide what order we go in, again, pretty randomly. Then we're each going to give kind of an opening statement. We're each going to give a rebuttal, and then we're going to give a closing statement. And then, dear viewer, what I want you to do is to say in the comments who you think won this debate, just for funsies. So if this was live, you could tell us live, but that is not what we're doing right now. So hopefully I get some comments out of you folks, because otherwise we'll never know, and we'll like never be able to rest because we won't know who actually won the debate. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so Riley has a D20. So we're going to trust him with his rolls because I at least don't have a setup where I thought about doing a die or something, but I don't have a way to look at it, but I trust you, Riley, so it's fine.
Okay.
So how about if it rolls odd, you will be doing acrylic standees, and if it rolls even, you'll be defending miniatures. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
Dice roll 13.
13.
So what'd you say? I forgot what you
Acrylic
said.
standees,
Okay.
I believe. You'll be defending or talking about or whatever. However you want to say it, acrylic standees. That's your side. Okay. Then we should see who gets to go first. So do you want to say like odd is me and even is you?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Wait,
All right.
odd is, what was it
Odd,
again?
I will go first. Even you will go first.
So it's 3.
Okay. So I go first.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm nervous. This is actually like the main thing I thought about doing on this channel for a long time is a debate kind of format. So this is going to be something.
Do you have experience in debate at all?
No. I think I did one when I was in junior high school. And I remember right. I was trying to prepare for it, and my mom eventually had to say, like, you can't just say, I'm right, I know I'm right. It doesn't work out. So no, I'm not any kind of professional debater. And this is meant to be a little bit, I mean, it can be as serious as we want it to be, but it's meant to be, it can be a little silly. That's fine. Whatever works, whatever you think will win over the audience to your side is fine. Keep your clothes on. Okay.
Dang it.
I know. Sorry. Okay.
It's the only thing I had. That was my entire strategy.
Yeah, I know you, Riley, but we gotta keep this family friendly here. All right. Okay, so miniatures. Miniatures have been around for a dang long time. I mean, I am a big fan and I always have been. They started off with lead miniatures. If you can believe that, they were a little bendy, kind of fun to chew on. And we progressed to the point where now we have amazing, amazing plastic miniatures. And some people like acrylic standees because they look at them and they're like, oh, look, they're all brightly colored. They're beautiful. And look, I'm not saying they're terrible. I'm not insane. I can see they look pretty. But let's be honest, folks. They're 2D. They're just 2D. They're missing an entire D that miniatures have. Miniatures are 3D. You can take them, you can turn them around. They look beautiful from any side you look at them. Any side, not just the front or the back. Acrylic standees, you look at them on the side and they look like nothing. They look like nothing. You don't want that. You could have people sitting around your table and those acrylic standees are not going to look good from every angle. They're just not. Miniatures always look good. You can appreciate their detail from any side at all. And if you so choose, you can paint those miniatures to be any colors you want. You want that demon to be a rainbow demon? You could do it. You want it to look all fiery like the Balrog from Lord of the Rings? You can do it. You can make those anything you want. So not only are they beautifully sculpted on their own, but you can then use your own creativity to change them to be however you want. Do you think that hero would look stupid with a green cape? Well, with acrylic standees, if they have a green cape, you're out of luck. They're going to always bother you. You're going to see them on the table and think that it looks awful. But if you are in control of the color of that cape, you can paint it red or blue or black or whatever you think would work. Because with miniatures, you have full control. You're not giving up your control to some giant board game corporation who's trying to tell you what you can and can't play with. No. You get to pick how your miniature looks. So what I'm talking about here, folks, is you can pick miniatures and pick freedom, or you could pick acrylic standees and have everything dictated to you. That's my opening statement.
Bravo.
Thank you. It was brilliant. I know.
It was very brilliant. But I just have a couple problems here. You brought up how miniatures have been around for a long time. I mean, long time. I mean, that means they're out of date, buddy. You don't want to be hanging out with some 90-year-old, do you? Nothing against 90-year-olds. You want something new. You want the newest, the coolest technology. You want a little brick Nokia phone, or do you want the newest Samsung or iPhone, you know, the newest, the best? You don't want to be playing Snake. You want to be playing some new phone, Bejeweled. What's, I don't know. Sorry. That's probably even out of date now.
I think so.
Yeah. And then you talked about how they're so beautiful, you know, these gray blobs on your table. How is that pretty? You know, I could just take a molding clay and put it on there, and that's just about as pretty. You have to paint them. Oh my goodness, you're taking hours and hours to paint a single miniature, where you have a game that has hundreds of miniatures. You're gonna paint put hundreds of hours into painting these miniatures so that you can play 2 or 3 games that equal like 4 or 5 hours. I mean, yeah, it'll look good, but guess what? An acrylic standee comes right out of the box looking so pretty, so fine. And it looks exactly like what you want. I don't know. You could have a Batman that looks real bad, or you could have a Batman that looks exactly like it does in the show. I don't know. Most of us aren't super skilled painters out there. Also, painting is more money too. So you got to put all that money into it. So, you got those out of the box, ready made, pretty acrylic standees. And then the extra D, 2D to 3D, that's more of an environmental impact. So you have a moral obligation to go with 2-dimensional. We're not able to just chop down trees, get oil, get petroleum, get what we need to make these 3 dimensions. We've got to be more environmentally conscious. So 2D beautiful acrylic standees, come on, you have to go that way. They look great. They're better for the environment. They're more environmentally better. Obviously, I'm good with words.
You are.
They're the newest trend. So go with the acrylics.
Okay. Now for rebuttal time. Okay, so I'm going to first off ignore Riley's, frankly, ageist attitude here about 90-year-old and hating gray, which is the color of old people's hair. I didn't expect him to go that way. We had a nice conversation earlier about accepting everybody, but that's, I guess it doesn't go to our elderly. But speaking about things in its twilight years, let's be honest, humanity. We're almost over, folks. I mean, I don't want to be dark here, but we're getting really close. We're getting really close. Now, you mentioned environmental impact, and that is very important. And part of the reason we're so close is because of all the negative environmental things that have happened. But look, it's too late. We're doomed. So now we're going to leave behind these things that we've created. Now, the cardboard, that's all going to go away when nature reclaims this planet, right? The plastics will not. Now, acrylics in general last about 200 years before they biodegrade. I looked this up. It wasn't standees, it was just acrylics. So maybe standees are different, but we're going to say 200 years. Now, that's not an absurdly long time, but it's definitely going to outlast us. Plastics, like in miniatures, I don't know, probably a bit longer. But, once humans are gone, some other species is going to evolve, become intelligent, and wonder what was here before. They're going to have their own archaeologists. They're going to look into the ruins and whatnot that they find. Now, let's say somehow these acrylic standees last to that point. We know the miniatures will, okay? But let's say the acrylic standees do. What are the chances that they won't be completely bleached by the elements? So they're going to find these little plastic discs that have no real meaning to them. It's not going to show them anything about our society. We will be forgotten to time. But with plastic miniatures in their full 3D glory, painted or not, they will show a semblance of what our shape kind of was. It'll give them an idea about our society. They will know that we wore 300-pound sets of armor everywhere we went, and giant swords that were probably as much as our body weight. They'll know all about us from this. They'll understand our legacy because of these things that we've left behind. You can't say that about the acrylic standees. It's just not going to happen, folks. Like, you might find a couple that are in color here or there, but they still won't understand, like, how deep is this human? Is he a mile deep from front to back? We don't know because he's in these acrylic standees. It tells us nothing, they will say. Maybe they're lizards and they'll, flick out their tongue as they say this. We don't know. It could be anything. It could be insects. Either way, they're going to want to know about us, and we want them to know about us. We don't want to be forgotten to history, which is what Riley would like. The old needs to go out of our memory, he says, implies. We don't need to think about those. So, and I think that's just, frankly, wrong-headed. Like, sure, the miniatures are probably worse for our environment, but they're better for our legacy. And one day, that's all we're going to have, people. So that's my rebuttal.
Wow. Wow. Wise words from a dinosaur.
Oh, wow.
They're going to come to this planet and they'll be like, these people just played with toys. We don't care about these toys. We want their oil. We want their resources. We're going to chop down the trees that are, let's face it, there probably aren't going to be any trees. It's going to be Mad Max in here. All those plastic are just going to melt in the heat when our ozone layer thins and can't, I don't know, obviously, science. When science comes, they're just going to melt, just like the acrylics, I'm not saying those are better or anything, but let's think about the now. Look at these shelves behind me. Look how thick they are. A lot of them, look at these. What? Let's tip that up. We've got visual aids here. Look at Marvel United. What if those had acrylic minis? And look how much space that's taking up. That's not even all of them. Let's go up even higher. Whoa, look at all that. Now imagine that those were acrylic minis. Those boxes could be this thin instead of this thin. Environment, even better for the environment, giving us a few extra years on this sad, dying earth, as David said. I'm not going to deny that. But it'll also save space on your shelves. So those thin boxes, more game in them means more games here. Also, cheaper games. Think about your wallet. You only have so much time, only so much money. You can't be throwing around these $300 for a big miniatures game. That $300 probably would condense down to like a $80 acrylic standee game with no scientific research or financial research into this, but I imagine they've got to be significantly cheaper to both make and print. It's just like silk screen printed meeples, right? You just have these little sheets of plastic or acrylic, and they're just printing these beautiful images on there. Think about the now. Think about your quality of life. Think about your wallet. That's all I got.
All right. So now we have our closing statements. Cheap and small. That's Riley's argument. Cheap and small. Like a McDonald's cheeseburger. Great. If you like cheap, small things, that's great. And maybe you're trying to live in one of those like 200 square foot houses and you need the space. That's awesome. And you can look up here and all your game boxes will look like the D&D books up here. They'll be that thin and you won't be able to look at them and tell what any of them even are. Great, you could store more. Will you find the game that you're looking for? Probably not. Who knows where that thing is? There's too many. Impossible to see. Ridiculous. No. Look, when you have a big, amazing, beautiful game, or a game with like a ton of cool expansions like Riley's Marvel United up there. I'm trying to point onto his screen, but I can't because I don't live with him. Thank you. You want to see that. That is not just a game. That is like a display of something that he loves. And he wants to shrink that down. I mean, do you want just a wallet size picture of your family, or do you want one like a big picture hanging over the mantle? Like, you want the big one. You want to always be reminded of that. You don't have to squint to see the things you love. You want to be on full display. Now, I said before that miniatures are freedom, and that is true. But they are so much more than that. They are not just a component for your game. They're an outlet for your creativity. Now, you may never choose to paint them, and that's fine. They look great just on their own, the sculpts do. But you could pick up an entirely new hobby, and yeah, they're more expensive. And yeah, it does take time to paint them, but this is not time wasted. This is time enjoyed. This is time loved. When you can't get together your game group, you could still get out some miniatures and paint them. I guess you could paint your acrylic standees, but that would be stupid. Don't do that. That's ridiculous. Look, maybe you're not a painter right now, or maybe you don't think you're a good painter. But tomorrow you may discover that that's something you want to try. And if you try it, you may discover that that is something that you love. So you have to ask yourself, are you against love the way that Riley is against old things? Don't be that person. Have love in your heart. Love yourself. Love your games. Love your hobbies. Love freedom. Choose miniatures, always. That's my final statement.
I think we have a moral obligation. He's talking about love, to love our environment. And that's one of the biggest things. Take one of those miniatures, smash it. You've got like a tenth of a miniature that gives you this beautiful art display. You know, just because your box is this thin doesn't mean you couldn't take those miniatures out and display those. You could take and combine your standees and have a beautiful display of your Disney characters, your birds, I'm looking at my games, X-Men, all displayed out in front of you in full beautiful color, not necessarily these big chunky blobs of gray or poorly painted miniatures that you spent hundreds of dollars more on, and then hundreds of hours of time and money trying to paint them to look halfway decent. Let's face it, the majority of us were lucky to get halfway decent. And you'll be able to get more games, more hobbies in, more playing time. I mean, isn't that what gaming is about? Think about all that time you can be playing with your friends, with your family, with building connections, talking about love. We love people. We want to be spending time with people. You're not spending time painting with people. You're spending time by yourself in the dark with a headlamp, painting these little miniatures. So do yourself the biggest favor and give yourself more playtime with beautiful displays. Go Acrylic Standees.
Okay, folks, that was our that was our debate about acrylic standees versus miniatures. Let us know in the comments who you think won that, or give us your opinion on this super hot button issue. Everyone's dying to know. One of us is going to lose all our followers, I'm sure. Out of curiosity, Riley, where do you actually stand on this issue?
It's such a complicated one because for some games, I truly would love acrylic standees. I mean, like Near and Far here, it has standees already, but I would love for those to be actual acrylic ones because they're way prettier than normal cardboard standees. Yeah. But I wouldn't want miniatures for that game. But like some games, I don't think I would like as much without the minis. I don't know though. Like Marvel United, as I think about the standees versus minis, there would be a part of me that's like, oh, that's fun. I've got this thing. it's already done. I can just play it. But then I also really do love painting. And I did say, oh, you're by yourself painting. But really, my wife, she does her art projects like painting and whatnot,
Right.
other things, not miniatures. And so I'll sit next to her and I'll paint miniatures while she does that. So really, we still get to spend family time together. And then if I had my thing that I was going to focus on was the 2-dimension thing. So like, well, at a certain angle, your standee disappears.
Yeah.
Like if I was a paper person and I went like this, you couldn't see me.
Yeah, I think I spend a lot of the game like turning them so I could like have like the perfect view of everything. But
right. But if you had 4 people on a table, one person at each end, you're bound to have it like I guess you'd need to like angle them. You couldn't have them straight on at you. I do think they're really pretty, and I would love for a lot of certain games to go that route, but I also love miniatures and painting miniatures, so I would hate for that to go away completely.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think I'm sort of in a similar boat. I mean, I love miniatures a lot. I've always been a big fan. I think of a game. If a game comes with acrylic standees and that's all it comes with, I'm not going to be like, oh man, I wish these had miniatures. I don't think that'll actually bother me. But if it's something where a game has like 2 versions and one's acrylic standees and one is miniatures, I think if I get the acrylic standees, I'll always kind of wish I got the miniatures. Just because I'll want to. Honestly, I have way more miniatures than I can ever paint in my lifetime. But I like having that possibility that I could break them out and paint, whether or not I ever actually do. The problem with miniatures is that I'm not bothered when the game is not at all painted, and I'm definitely not bothered when the game is totally painted. It's the in-between where some are painted and some are not. That's where it's like, I don't know, that hurts it. That hurts it worse than having none of them painted to me. So it's like, you have to really commit, I think, to a game to paint it if you're going to do it. Otherwise, it's ridiculous. But I don't know.
I feel that with like my Marvel United, I started off painting characters I didn't necessarily care about because I was learning to paint. But then now I've probably painted a third of my very base Marvel core.
Right.
And then I've got the X-Men on top of that. I'm never going to get all of them painted because then I'm getting more games that I have miniatures for that I'm like, well, I have to paint these too. Like,
right.
And so I'm always going to have that mix of unpainted and painted. But like Marvel, if I had that's the thing. I would love the option. But I know financially that probably doesn't make sense because they need to mass produce and they get discounts on hitting certain numbers.
Right.
But if that was at all a feasible option for them, like Massive Darkness 2, that Kickstarter, so many really cool miniatures. I would love to paint some of those, but I know I wouldn't. I would rather be painting my Marvel figures. I'm going to get Marvel Zombicide eventually, and that's going to be even more miniatures that will be a mix of like unpainted and painted. But that one I would choose miniatures. And so when I think about it, I would probably be like, yeah, I'll go acrylic on Massive Darkness 2 because I have other things I want to paint more than that. And that would be a prettier display.
Yeah.
Like
I'm just curious.
Sorry. Gloomhaven announced their like miniatures thing.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Which is really cool because I remember playing that and thinking, oh, how cool would it be to have, you have your character as a miniature.
Right.
How cool would it be to have the enemies as miniatures?
Yeah.
But then, I don't know, like if they gave that same option to just get acrylic standees for all of the enemies, I think I would go that route. For that one.
Yeah, I do find it a little jarring when there's a mix, when you have like miniatures and standees. Like I kind of just want to, I don't even care which way it goes. I mean, I have a preference, but it's fine either way. But like, if it's all one or the other, I prefer it rather than, I think it's kind of weird to have like, I'm 3D and you're paper thin. It's a little odd. I mean, it's okay, but
make it narratively, Matt, like, oh, these 2D beings are invading the planet and you need to stop
that works.
There you go.
that could work out. But I'm curious if the industry is going to start going more towards the standee way. It seems like there's a lot. Well, I mean, who knows? But it seems like there's a lot of people that are kind of in support of that idea, and especially right now, if they can figure they can make it and ship it cheaper, that might be something that we see a lot more of. I'm totally speculating. I don't know anything about any of that, but it wouldn't shock me. I'll say that.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking, as you talked about shipping cheaper, right? That I should have brought that up in there, because obviously
I actually didn't
that
think about it
would
till
save
now.
on shipping.
So
Yeah. But then I started thinking of, we both got Marvel Zombicide, which costs an insane amount to ship. But then I got thinking about the giant Galactus and having that as an acrylic standee.
No, that'd be terrible. I would hope if they decided to do acrylic standees, they just wouldn't even do that, because that would be dumb.
But
that'd
it'd be so funny to have this like 2-foot acrylic standee.
Oh God,
it's terrible.
I'm so glad they didn't. Future game companies, don't make a giant 2-foot standee. Just don't do it. That's dumb.
Oh my God.
Oh God. All right. Well, we are running a lot longer than I thought I was going to, but I don't know if it's fantastic. It's good though. I've been enjoying it.
Hopefully people are entertained.
Yeah, well, hopefully something's happened. So Riley, why don't you tell people where they can find you and plug some of your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me I'm most active on Twitter. I also have an Instagram. I'm trying to get a little more active on there, at Riled Nerd. That's my main account. And then I post board game community show on there, and then board game stuff, and even just casual stuff. And then on Friend Info Adventure Co, there's at FF Adventure Co, and that's on all of the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I haven't done much on TikTok. You've been doing TikTok, and man, that's a
little bit.
I just do not. I feel too old.
I am definitely too old to be doing it. It's I say I don't know any statistics. I always say I'm in like the 10% of the oldest people on there. I feel like I must be, but oh well.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. But anyway, it's fun though. But yeah, so you can do that. You can find both the board game community show and Friend Info Adventure Co anywhere you podcast. I think it should be everywhere. And that's I think everything, right? Did I miss anything?
I think so. I don't think so. I could be wrong. If you think of anything, let me know and I'll put it in the notes.
I'm sure that's it.
All right, cool.
Thanks so much for having me on.
It has been a pleasure. Yeah, it was fun. Again, if this is a disaster, at least I got to chat with you for a while, so that's cool.
Whoa, okay. I don't think it was a disaster.
Not because of you, Riley. You're like the professional interview guy here. It'd be all on me if it's a disaster. So
no, I thought you on here. I'll say you did an awesome job interviewing. I felt
thank you.
Very supported. I think like I was able to talk about my stuff, and I felt heard. So
yeah, well, I appreciate you being willing to be the first victim guest on here. It helps that I kind of know you. So, I mean, that's, if, someone who I totally had no real rapport with at all so far would be a lot more nerve-wracking for me anyway. So yeah, folks, if you liked this video, let me know if this is more, if this is something you'd like to see more of. I don't currently have a specific schedule planned as far as how often I'll do these. It's just going to be when I have the time and when I can get a guest. And that's just going to be how it is for the moment. We'll see if that becomes more regular in the future. Also, excuse me, assuming the link works, I now have a merch store. So I'll have a link in the comments or the show notes about that. So if you like our logo or you like the AGNO for everyone, or even without the for everyone logos, those will be up there and you can buy there's way more shirts in the world than I thought there were types of shirts. I had no clue. So there's a lot of options there, and some you can get a mug or all kinds of weird stuff. So anyway,
I will say, because you use Spring.
Yes.
If you're going to get a t-shirt and you're like, I'm picky about my t-shirts. I got one of the cheaper ones for another one. And I really wish that I bought the one that was like $4 more. Because it would have been a lot softer, and the other one's a little bit stiff. So put that out there. It's $4 more, okay?
Yeah, go for it. Because I was amazed. There's like I don't know, like 7 or 8 different types of t-shirt. I'm like, I don't know what these mean, so I'll just make shirts in all those and people can pick, and hopefully it's good.
Yeah.
We'll see. But anyway, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time I put out a video. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you all around the table again at All Games New and Old. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed that video, you might also like this one.
Or this one.
If you like any of our videos, what you should do is click this little button to subscribe so you'll know about the next time we put out a video.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.